Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Hear Me Out Just a Thought podcast. Today, things are going viral, and so we need to talk about that T app, little data breach that kind of exploded across X or Twitter, however you call that, and other platforms. We need to talk about what happened. How did an app that was supposed to allegedly expose some men who conduct themselves badly in the dating scene ended up exposing the women, and now everyone is talking about it, which means we need to talk about it because not only is this a data breach, but it's also an important lesson for all of us to remember. So you know what? Hear me out. It's just a thought. Okay, so if you are new here, so glad you're here. My name is Gigi. I host this podcast. I like to talk about anything and everything. I like to touch on topics that help us grow. I love to also talk about faith and where it meets culture. I like to bring up whatever is trending on the internet and see what you and I can learn from that. And I like to hear your comments and read your comments on the different topics that we kind of tackle together. Last week, I took a break to bring back the apologetics series, and I intend to release, part 2 this coming Thursday. Stay tuned for that. If you have missed the conversation, I kind of had dinner with my family members who are Jehovah's Witnesses. I asked a very important question. They provided me with answers. I had a problem with the answer, so I brought it to your ears. If you have missed that part 1, go and check it out and stay tuned for part 2 this Thursday. But in the meantime, the internet will not hold. The internet will not wait for me and you to finish a conversation, and something has to go viral. So last week, I don't know if you have paid attention, but I want to say Friday last week, if I'm not mistaken, it was on July 25th, T, right? That app, it's called T, as in, T. It's an app that was used by women to kind of anonymously, but not really anonymously, share experiences about the men that they dated. And that app confirmed basically that there was a breach, and that not 10, 20, 500, but 72,000 images. 72,000 images. And I will also add 13 verification selfies, right? So the women, when they were logging onto the website, they had to take a selfie of themselves. They had to also add in an ID. I think I heard something like driver's licenses, and also 59 photos from just the posts and the messages and the comments. Just 72,000 images kind of got out, and I think the system was hacked into, and so it just got out. And so anybody who from that app, of course, who signed up before February of last year was impacted, and then their email addresses, I think they mentioned, and phone numbers were not accessed. It was mostly the images. And so what the owners of the app kind of seemed to say was that there was an issue with the cloud. I'm not, plugged in enough to understand what all of that means. But I heard and I read from both the app owners' communications and also what people are saying online that it was not an advanced hack. It was mostly like a negligence thing, according to whoever looked into that. So if you know more, tell us. I'm not too well versed in that universe, but I will remember one thing, which is that there's a second wave of it all that revealed that over 1 million private messages, and some of them, of course, had sensitive details in those messages, were kind of out also. And so now everybody's panicking And everybody's panicking because it's not just some tech news. I know some people kind of got wind, pardon me, of it because it was a tech industry type of news. But to me and to you, this might also expose us to another type of conversation because it's a privacy and a trust disaster. And if you're on this channel, you already know where I'm going to take it, but we need to learn lessons from the women that were using that app and from the men that are now kind of taking their revenge by creating a separate type of app. Because what I've heard, and I think this has been trending in the last, 48 hours, is that from the leak, there was another app that was created, or another platform that was created, where the men that were exposed and other men essentially are now taking those images of the women that were exposing some, folks, and also exposing them and grading them and kind of giving them an upvote or a downvote based on attractiveness or, desirability. And so this has been such a mess. Let me know if you have heard of it all. Let me know if I'm, telling it as it is or if I have missed something. But a couple of things that we need to remember, and I'll start with the simplest things, but I will end with where I want us to end. The T app, I think it marketed itself as any app, as a safe and anonymous, like a whisper type of network where you can share the flags. You can share the red flag that about people that you have dated and met, and it was not. Obviously, there was a leak. People are saying it was not, very safe. And so I want us to remember that just because something markets itself as safe does not mean it's safe. And sometimes we just have to kind of verify what is it I want to call security settings, what they're asking you to do just to use an app. I know if an app asks us to take a selfie of ourselves and upload our driving license, you might not want to do that immediately. You might want to kind of get away from that. So this is of course a reminder for everybody to think, to use critical thinking skills when we're using tech, because everything we upload is then up there. Okay. And then I want to, of course, talk about something else, because the public reaction of it all is just so interesting. And I always talk about how anything that goes viral reveals something about human nature. And anytime we see a great example of the human naturing, I know that's not a word, but it's a word starting today, it reveals a truth that is timeless, and that I want anybody who's connected with me, anybody who's on this channel, to kind of learn and remember and apply in real life. And so what people are saying is essentially, people are outraged. Some people are questioning, the app's mission, like what were the users, the system configuration team trying to do. Other people, of course, warn the others from, to be sure that we're not exposing ourselves to any threats online. But then you see the war of the sexes pick back up. I talked about this in other episodes about relationships and love and sex and things like that, where it's kind of this vibe now online where men attack women and women attack men and nobody likes each other. And so the whole purpose of the app, like I mentioned, was to expose men that are, not acting according to, in accordance to women's expectations. And so you would go on there to gossip about the men and to maybe, expose men for their behaviors. But then the app that was, parallelly created is the same thing. And so now everybody's hating on each other. And it went from like a cyber security issue to very much the battle of the sexes and to petty comments. I will not go to the petty comments to read it, but they're not very respectful. And they expose this ongoing, at least that's what I've noticed. Let me know if you agree, but this ongoing war between the sexes. And when we're disappointed, when we're expecting from person A and they disappoint us, sometimes instead of learning and moving on, or sometimes instead of maybe forgiving if it's not too bad, we kind of turn to other people that are going through the same thing, and we decide that we're gonna participate in gossip or participate in public exposure, because the thought initially is, well, they harmed me and I'm trying to help the next lady or the next gentleman, and I'm trying to protect them from this man or this woman that is a fraud. And so the sentiment is legit. You're trying to kind of protect people. I will also be honest and say I'm not sure everyone that are on these apps, whether it's T or the sister app that was created to bash women, I'm not sure that it was a genuine thing. I think most of it can just be, I also hate this individual that I used to date or that I have dated or that I couldn't date because they rejected me, and now I need to ruin their reputation. But what we put online, and I just want us to remember it all, what we put online, even when we think it is anonymous, we kind of think and we forget that servers and archives and even human errors can happen, right? So whatever is on there, and whatever we think is kept is not always kept. So I'm trying to say, what we put online, we should be okay with it kind of leaking. And so we shouldn't be expecting it to leak, but we should be aware that it can leak. And if it can leak, how are we representing ourselves? How are we representing our loved ones? How are we representing even the people that have harmed us? When we speak of them, it also shows who we are and what kind of person we are. And then speaking of people, right? Speaking ill of people, whether it's publicly or privately, let's all remember some recent controversies of private events or things that we thought that the people thought they were private and end up on national/international news. So speaking ill of people can backfire. And if those words are preserved or exposed, it can come back to bite us in the behind. And so we need to also remember that. We need to remember, my first thought was, why this app? Why would I go online and then publicly bash somebody, regardless of what they may have done to me? I believe in learning and moving on. This is why I always bring the viral stuff onto the channel. I believe in learning and moving on, but I don't necessarily believe in opening a mic and bashing people, or opening a forum and putting somebody's name, full address, or like face on the internet to publicly speak bad about them, because personally, I think it just reflects what I am. If I'm out here saying these things, it reflects what kind of person I am. And because of this breach, my private information can then be out there publicly. And so I need to remember, and I encourage anybody listening to this podcast, of course, to remember how we speak of people online, how we speak of people even in private messages, who to trust, who to not trust. And it all comes down to what kind of person we want to be. This is the kind of point of my message here. It's not what did somebody do to me, what did a company breach in terms of data information. It's not what happened outside, is how did I conduct myself? And then, of course, errors will happen or ill-intentioned people exist. But at the end of the day, how did I conduct myself behind closed doors when I thought nobody would see this, or maybe only a fraction of the population or select people would see this information? And so, yeah, speaking ill of people has consequences. And thirdly, I would say that we need to remember to weigh by the same measure other people than we do ourselves, right? If we judge others harshly, we should probably consider how we, judge ourselves and how we would want some grace and some privacy. Because I've seen a couple of examples where, for example, the women would say crazy things about a specific person, but when the same comments or similar comments were said about them, and vice versa, by the way, it was just this outrage. I can't believe this is out there. I can't believe this disgusting behavior is being encouraged by other men or other women. And it was almost like we forget sometimes, but that we kind of should weigh by the same measure ourselves and other people. They're also human beings. We're human beings. And so that's why I was saying we need to kind of remember how we are acting in all of these situations, how we conduct ourselves behind closed doors. I will say it's not easy. Of course, we're not all super wise, ancient people who know everything or can do everything. We are tempted sometimes to vent. We're tempted to maybe take revenge. We are tempted to tell the truth to the world and protect other people. We are tempted to make the person that made us suffer also suffer, to have them kind of taste their own medicine. We're tempted to do a lot of things. But and I'm going to go into kind of like the biblical wisdom of it all. So if it is your first time here and you're here to just read about a story or hear about a story, and now you're like, why are we talking about the Bible? We always do. We always do here. We like to put forward the biblical wisdom because it is so true all of the time. It is so applicable everywhere. So I invite you to test it out, try it out, hear it out. Hear me out. That's the name of the podcast. Hear me out and see where this takes you. But as Paul said, just because you can do something doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's edifying, doesn't mean it's beneficial. And so Paul says that in the Bible. And so we need to remember all of that. We need to remember, just because I can put some tea on an app about, Steve that I dated last year, doesn't mean I should. Just because I'm a man, I'm seeing this woman and I find her unattractive and I want to tell the world that I hate her and she's unattractive, doesn't mean I should. Just because this app is asking me to put my face and ID and fingerprints and like hair DNA in to be able just to log in and I can do it and I'm willing to do it, does not mean I should do it. And so to help us, because who am I if I'm not here to just help all of us do better in the online world and in the real world, outside world, let's kind of do some biblical reflection. Let's bring forward some truth. Let's talk about the stuff that has been written before the internet that is still true, that are still true. Let's give the non-believers, non-Christian friends that are here listening to this podcast a reason to see how the Bible just says things that are true and that are beneficial to all. And so let's first talk about Galatians 6 and on verse 7, where we read that whatsoever a man soweth, that he shall also reap, kind of meaning what people have been saying online in fewer words, which is karma. People call it karma nowadays. It's just like you kind of put things out and they come back to bite you after, or if you do good, good comes to you. If you do bad, bad comes to you. If you put out petty, petty will come back to you. Some people like to use another 4-letter little acronym that mess around and find out type thing. But essentially, it's been said that we kind of reap what we sow, and our words and our actions have, effects. And so we need to keep that in mind and think, what am I putting out there? Not because it's some like magic, weird, spiritual universe thing, but it's just because it's true and things can happen. So why not be wise about it? And then when it comes to how we speak of ourselves, but also how we speak of other people, the things we choose to say, the things we choose to communicate, we know from Proverbs 18 on verse 21 that the tongue has the power of life and death. It does not mean you can kill people with your tongue. Don't go there. But what I'm saying and what the Bible is saying is that we have the power to bless people. We have the power to encourage. We have the power to uplift. We have the power to give, wisdom lessons and good advice and good example with what we say. And we have the power to also lead somebody in the wrong direction, or start an argument for no reason, or just kill people's spirit by being negative each day, every day. And words, even when they're typed, right? Even when they're typed on a screen, on a keyboard through a screen, or when we think we're anonymous, we're speaking of people, and we can wound people, we can hurt people, we can hurt ourselves, we can expose ourselves, we can expose people that maybe we misunderstood. So at the end of the day, whatever we speak, whatever we choose to say should be reflected on, and we should just think before we speak, because in this very example, it was so fast. they messed around, they found out so fast. And then let's talk about reputation for a minute, because in this day and age, we kind of live in such a social era that all of our reputation is mostly online. Yes, we have our reputation in our families, we have our reputation, within our community. But at the end of the day, most of us have social media, or I guess a social image, whether small or big. And a reputation, let me first read Proverbs again in chapter 22 on verse 1 that says, "A good name is more desirable than great riches." And so we need to be careful about our reputation, but also about what we say about other people when we're trying to maybe ruin their reputation, because this can be more and is more desirable nowadays than just the dollar, the money, because you can lose all of your money, you can lose all of your opportunities, you can lose people's respect. You can lose a job, you can lose pretty much whatever because of a reputation that you have, and sometimes in a deserved way and sometimes in an undeserved way. And so we have to remember that at the end of the day, if we are about to open our mouths or, grab our keyboards, to grab our cell phones, computers, and whatever, to say something about somebody online, to remember that it can play into them, yes, gaining great reputation, but also losing reputation. And so we need to be fair in what we say. We need to be also measured in what we say. We need to sometimes mind our businesses, simply mind our business and go about our day and and make sure that we're not participating in petty things that can ruin somebody's reputation and livelihood sometimes. And then lastly, I want to talk about, I guess, Jesus himself, right? When we talk about Christianity or the Bible, this is from the Bible is the word of God. And so when we talk about the word of God, or when we call ourselves Christians, we need to remember who we're following, like who's our model, what we're trying to be, who we're trying to be. And that's the person of Jesus Christ. And he was the perfect example of humility. And very often Jesus would, go away and kind of take time to pray and seek wisdom, take time to be with the people and serve, not necessarily to draw the attention, but to serve, to teach, to make other people better, to suffer the consequences of the actions of those people. But although Jesus did denounce the things that were wrong when they were wrong, he was not doing it to simply put people on blast for it to end there. It was out of love for all of humanity. It was out of love for all of his neighbors and sons and daughters and all of those things, which we are. And so we need to remember that somebody died for us. Legit, somebody died for us and our sins and our errors. And that's the love and the humility that Jesus came to teach and open the door for us to live another type of life, to just repent, put those behaviors to the side, and just move the way he moved and get closer to him and know God. And so I wanted to end by saying all of these things that keep happening online, all of these lessons that we keep learning. Yes, it's viral moments make me able to come and use them as an example. But at the end of the day, if we learn nothing, if we can't look to Jesus to see, hey, what would Jesus do is valid. So if we're not learning anything, we're then just using these viral moments to be entertained. And as I always say, the next time the entertainment might be you or me if we don't learn from these things. So that's kind of what I wanted to share. I want to throw it to you. First of all, have you heard about this story? If so, what have you heard? And also, I want to know what you have seen online about it, what you have learned about it, and do you participate in these kind of things? What do you say about your exes and people you have dated with your friends and family and online? What's up with that? And more internally, hey, if we were to be exposed tomorrow, what would it look like? Dun, dun, dun. Anyways, so I think this app leak, I guess, this T app leak was a wake-up call for me, for you, hopefully about, digital stuff, digital dignity, security, trust, and consequences. And I'm not here, of course, to put fear out. It's just about being mindful and about the stewardship of what we have, what we say and what we share and what we have. So let's try to do well and be good. And so, yeah, let me know what you think, and see you very, very soon for part 2 of my conversation with our dear friends, the Jehovah Witnesses. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you next time.